created them in order to do most of our work for us. And they decided that the next phase of evolution should be them, and there was a war, and the machines were all solar powered, so we decided, as we sometimes do, to scorch the sky, is how they put it, to block out the sun, thinking that that would kill off all the machines. What it actually did was make the world uninhabitable for us. And the machines figured out another way to generate power, which is through human bodies, because we generate an enormous amount of power. And so in the movie, humans are now grown in pods, and in order to harness our energy and to keep us happy, we are plugged in, our brains are plugged into this thing called the matrix, which generates this computer-generated life that we all think that we're living. Now, it's kind of a fascinating twist on, is this real? You know, what's real? Now, one guy who is not happy to have been unplugged, he's been unplugged for a while, and he's decided that he doesn't like that anymore. He's he's in the Matrix, and sitting in a restaurant that he knows isn't real, and he says, you know, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realized? Ignorance is bliss. And he wants to be plugged back in. But I always keep thinking, you know, once you have started to unplug from the story that everyone tells themselves, or the story that we tell, that our society tells itself, and you start to see truth differently or in an expanded way, can you really go back? Can you really go back to that other way of thinking? Or does it end up being like, you know, this thing that just bugs you all the time? So choices and the evolution of consciousness. The first place in the evolution of consciousness is this place of victim. That's pretty much where we all start. And everything is out of our control and happens to us, and we don't believe that we have the ability to control much of what happens in our life. And in the scene at the beginning of the movie, Neo is actually asking out loud these questions. Why is this happening to me? What did I do? Have you ever been in that place? What did I do? When you know darn well that you created the mess that you're in. But what did I do? I'm not going to say what I did, because then I have to admit that I created the mess that I'm in. But you also know how sometimes you get this something in your head that just won't quite let go. Like some idea, some expanding, and for many of us have been through this. We were in that place of, what did I do? My life is not working. And there's something in us that's giving us those sleepless nights. Morpheus calls it the splinter in your mind that keeps telling you that something isn't quite right with the world. And in our case, the question doesn't end up being, what is the matrix, which is what Neo's question is. In our early consciousness, is it, am I really destined to be a victim for the rest of my life? Was I really born to live with this set of limitations that I have imposed on myself? And is this really the life that I want? Or is there something more to experience here? Now, I've had that splinter. Is there something more to experience here? And I know, because I talked to all of you, that we've all had that splinter. What is it that I am here to do and to create? And how is it that I am here to make a difference in the world? Now, Neo gets to make some of these choices twice. The first time, he is out on a window ledge, and Morpheus tells him, you can either jump to the scaffold and climb up to the top of the building and get away, or you can turn around and go back in through the window and face the two FBI dude kind of looking guys and see what happens. The choice is yours. And Neo stands there on the ledge. Now I know, we know this place. He stands there on the ledge and he's trying to make himself jump, and he cannot trust himself enough to do it. He cannot let go of the post. He does not believe that the scaffold is going to rise up to meet him. And so he goes back in because he puts his trust in the system instead of his trust in himself. In this particular case, the universe kind of rises up in that moment to help him more easily choose something different the next time, because he learns that trusting the system probably isn't going to work for him anymore through weird, creepy ways. But Trinity helps him the next time with one of what I think is one of the more profound reminders in this movie, actually. She asks him to trust her. If he can't trust himself yet, then trust her. And he is like, why would I trust you? I just met you, really. And she looks at him and she says, because you have been down there, Neo. You know that road. You know exactly where it ends and where it goes. And I know it's not where you want to be. We've all, how many times in our lives have we gone down the same road multiple times, knowing it's not really the road that we want to be on, and that we're going to end up where we're going if we don't change roads. And you got to have a little faith to change the road. Just step off the path, step onto another one, and know that the scaffold is going to rise up to meet you. But it leads Neo to his next big choice. He stays in the car. It leads him to his next big choice, which is the blue pill or the red pill. The blue pill, the red pill actually, the blue pill. Take the blue pill, you wake up in the morning, you're right back in the life that you had. You're back in your own bed, you're back in your life, you're doing whatever it is that you want to do. You take the red pill, and you get to go down the rabbit hole into a whole new experience of life. Now, most of us don't get to have it in such a drastic way, you know? I mean, sometimes it would be nice if the choice was that clear, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it's very stark. We can change our whole life. Do we change schools? Do we go to school? Do we stay with this in this relationship that we're miserable in, or do we change it, or do we move on into something else? And here's the thing. And one of the things that I believe and have seen in my life and other people's lives very clearly, whatever you choose, the universe rises up to support your decision. The problem that we all get in is that we make a choice and then we continue to question the choice. Instead of making the choice, I'm going to stay here in this relationship, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to find what works, and I'm going to be happy in it, and we're going to make this thing happen. The universe conspires and puts all of its energy behind that. But most of us end up living in this middle place. Same thing. Do I stay in my job where I'm not particularly happy and I find a way to make it work for me and make myself happy either in the job or outside of work, whatever that looks like, or do I leave and do something else? But most of us go, okay, I'm going to stay in the job because it feels safe. And then we spend all of our time going, but maybe I should have left my job, maybe I should have left my job. And the universe says yes to both all the time. And you end up in this middle, convoluted, soupy place that is generally miserable. Anybody been there? Yeah. So pick one. That's the thing. If we pick one and we stay solid in it. Now, I know a few people in my life who are people who just make a decision, and that's their decision. And they don't question it. And I used to think, well, that's kind of limiting. And now I think there's some power in that, you know? Unless you're just doing it because you're stubborn. But really, if you're doing it because it's, yes, I'm going to make this choice and this is what I'm going to be happy in, generally speaking, they're pretty happy. Have you noticed that? It's not always easy to live with them. But that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other talk. So Neo takes the red pill, obviously, because otherwise the movie would come to a quick end. And fast forward, and we're in stage 2 of consciousness, which is the manifestor stage. It's the place where we begin to create, where we understand that we create our own experience, we create our own life. It's all that law of attraction stuff that's been so popular over the last several years. And in this case, though, Neo doesn't so much start manifesting as learning a different lesson about what stuff might be. He gets his first lesson in going back into the Matrix because they have figured out, you know, they're living on a spaceship as real human beings now, but they figure out how to reinsert themselves. They have these plugs still in the back of their head, and they can reinsert themselves as digital code that is conscious of who they really are. Now that's a good play. That's an interesting thing. So keep that in mind also while you're thinking about, you know, water may exist. When you can reinsert yourself as code, knowing who you fully, truly are. So they've learned how to do that and to work within that code. So he gets to start to learn about this. They load him into what they call the construct program. I love the construct program. Actually, it's such a great example of this whole thing of the manifestor stage, which is white space where you can have anything that you need show up, or you can learn anything you want to learn. Like he learns jujitsu in like 60 seconds, which would be a really cool way to learn it, don't you think? You know, or later on, Trinity, she learns how to fly a helicopter in the same amount in like 30 seconds. So there is a place in our brain, apparently, where we can plug something in and learn just like that. And that would be really cool. But Neo is trying to really understand this. He's an adult who's been pulled out of this life, and his brain is ready to burst, trying to understand what's happening. And so he looks at a chair, and he's like, is this real? Or is it, what is this? And Morpheus says, have you ever had a dream, Neo, that have you ever had a dream that seemed so real that you were sure when you woke up that it was? But if you were unable to wake up from that dream, how would you tell the difference between the dream world and the real world? If real is what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Now, that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. Did we just hear that piano and Jack play Beethoven, or did we hear a bunch of electrical signals that we interpreted as music in our brains? Do we see a podium, or is this a podium actually here, or is it a bunch of electrical signals that we have interpreted as pieces of wood that have been put together that look like a podium? Now, I don't have the answers to that. Sorry. But he learns that all of the stuff of his life, all of the things that he thought that he owned, that he lived in, the places he went to eat, his favorite restaurant, were just electrical impulses that had been running through his brain. And none of those things had actually happened. Now, if you really want to get into that, how much of your life has actually happened, and how much of it is electrical impulses that you have reinterpreted in your memory as something that maybe wasn't quite what it was? And how often do you get together with your siblings or your friends or your relatives or other people, and you compare the story of an event, and your interpretation of the story is completely different from theirs? Because your electrical impulses interpreted this series of activities or actions as something different than theirs did. Stage 3 consciousness. I'm going to leave you with that one. The place where we let go of making everything happen, where we let go of this idea that we have to force creation, that we have to make it all happen, and we deepen our connection with Spirit, which we've been doing through this whole process. We've been deepening our connection with God in a way that we get to understand that Spirit works through us, and we live in a place of allowing more and more of the time. We allow that to happen. Now, for Neo, he learns that in the Matrix, when he's in the Matrix, when he's code, that he can allow himself to connect with the program. And in turn, he can bend the rules that he always thought existed, and that he always thought he had to live by. He can be faster, he can be stronger, he dodges bullets. He begins to understand that as code, there are no limits. Now, what I see in this is this possibility of the Matrix as Spirit, or as God, or as this universal presence and energy, which, and I know I'm stretching here, but really, if the Matrix, because this is double-sided, if the Matrix is God, then initially the Matrix is all of these controls and all of this system that's been set up to manage us. But if the Matrix, if you can reinsert yourself into the Matrix, plugged in, knowing fully and consciously who you are as a real and human being, then you have a completely different experience of it, and it allows you the freedom to do anything that you think you can do. You following me here? Okay. So he is doing his thing. No one's told him what he can't do. He didn't grow up in this, so he doesn't, And so the best part, one of the best examples of this is not even the dodging bullets. He meets this little boy who is a candidate for being the one, and who is practicing bending spoons with his mind. And the little kid looks at him, he asks him about it, and the kid looks at him and says, do not try to bend the spoon with your mind. That would be impossible. Instead, try to realize the truth. There is no spoon. Then you will see it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself. There is no spoon. Then you will see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself. There are no limits. There are no constraints. There is only the things that we wrap around our own minds and say we can or cannot do. Now, Neo goes beyond anything that they have ever known or experienced. He reaches stage 4 consciousness, which is the place that completely understands that there is no separation between ourselves and spirit, and that we are absolutely one, where we are capable of anything. For him, it means that his physical body is no longer impacted by what happens to him in the matrix. He not only is the code, he knows he is the code when he's in there. You know, in the movie, Morpheus tells him, he asks Morpheus if he dies out when he's in the matrix, does he die in real life? And Morpheus says yes, because the body cannot live without the mind. Because up until that time, no one could make that break. No one could look at themselves within the matrix getting shot at and make the break that says that that's not real anymore. They could do it, they could jump across buildings, you know, and they could run really fast and do all sorts, you know, run up and down the walls and things like that. They could bend gravity, but they could not bend for themselves this idea that their life, that they were still alive here and not here, that they really were code here. Until he does it. Until he gets it to the point where he does it. And what I see in that, and what I see in this correlation of correlating Neo to Jesus as a teacher and as the man, was this healing power. This connection and oneness that says that I do what I do as the Father within me, because anything that I say, I create automatically. And so I am able to say to you, heal, stand up and walk. I can make wine, maybe. I saw this really interesting video clip that was on this thing of Jesus was not a bartender, but it's a whole other thing too. But really, when we're in that place, that's where he understood who he really was, and he could do anything. He could go into the matrix, he could fly, he could go into the matrix and do anything he wanted, and then move back into his whole body. But it made me wonder, if we reach that place of connection and oneness, is there any illness? Or is illness simply an experience that we have to help us to grow into that? And to realize our connection in a more profound way. So many people that experience illness end up experiencing it as a healing journey in their own being, in their hearts, in their being. In some way, something triggers for them, and they find a place where they forgive, or they pray, or they learn something new about themselves that they really wanted to know. So is there illness or is there healing? I'm going along again today, sorry. But here's the other one. Do we experience death or do we just vibrate away? Which is my preferred method, by the way, going for that. So I thought, okay, your assignment for the week, besides water, hunger, and me exist. I want to ask you to try something this week. You know, we're having fun, we're doing movies, we're eating popcorn during service. I want you to bend your mind in some new way this week. If you are a person that does math, write a poem. If you are a person that writes poetry, you know, Bill, come and fix my fence. Or, do you know what I mean though? Take a chance. Leap off a new ledge. It's summer, you know, everybody's kind of, where it's getting hot, everybody's feeling lazy. Take a chance this week. Do something that you don't normally do. Because you can remember that it is your choices, not your current abilities, When you limit yourself by saying, I am not able to do